Hello, my name is James Stoodley, here again at Full Potential Learning Academy. Today, we'll be going over the subjunctive mood and why it's important to study this mood to understand English grammar. Today, we'll be going over the subjunctive mood versus the imperative mood and the indicative mood. We'll be going over the auxiliaries of the subjunctive mood, and we'll also be going over overdoing subjunctive mood and watching out for sentences with the word if using subjunctive mood. Finally, we'll have some practice to help cement your understanding of the lecture here today. Moods of English grammar. There are three moods of English grammar to consider. There is indicative grammar, which is grammar that relays real or factual statements. I'm going to the park is an example of one. There's imperative mood, which indicates commands. Go to the park is an example of that. And then there's the subjunctive mood, which covers more types of statements in grammar. I wish I were going to the park is simply one of them. The tricky thing about subjunctive mood is that it covers a lot of auxiliaries, which we'll go over in the next slide, and they all blend together seamlessly. Subjunctive mood, auxiliary examples. Subjunctive mood is usually indicated by its own auxiliaries, such as would, should, might, may, were, and be. There are 5 tones of the auxiliaries use. There's the hypothetical tone, which is something that could be true. If I were just a little faster, I could play wide receiver. There's also counter the fact, which is something that is untrue. He plays as if he were not even injured. There is wishful, which is something that could be true but isn't. I wish I were 2 inches taller. There is doubtful, something that is probably not true. I think she might be in over her head. And finally, there is suggestions, which could be true if the subject in the sentence follows the suggestion or not. She said we should practice harder. These auxiliaries indicate the subjunctive mood because they are used to clarify things that could or could not be true. There are also a few other examples and indirect commands, but those don't necessarily count because those are also part of imperatives. By looking at these auxiliaries, we can understand subjective mood a bit better and understand why it's important in English. Overdoing subjunctives and ifs. If you're not careful with the subjunctive mood, your writing with the subjunctive mood could sound archaic and old, much like someone who was writing in the Middle Ages. Which is why in the example below it is wrong to say, if that be so, and we have to change it to, if that is so, so that way we are not writing in an archaic form. Subjunctive mood may be declining because of this, but it's still important to study subjunctive mood in order to understand English grammar as a whole. Also, watch out for your ifs in the sentence. It is better to say if had instead of if / would have in the sentences below, so that way it is correct. In the wrong example below, we have if he would have arrived a minute earlier. That is wrong because you're having the unnecessary would have in the sentence, which is why you changed it to if he had arrived a minute earlier, so that way it is correct. By watching out for archaic writing and watching your ifs when used in a sentence, you can better yourself with writing in subjunctive mood. Here is some practice of the subjunctive mood lecture we have gone over. To start, you must read a sentence, then identify which auxiliary it has, and finally correct any problems with the sentence. Feel free to pause the video now and try out the sentences below. Don't feel bad if you make mistakes, this is simply practice after all. If you haven't paused the video yet, please do so now and try out the sentences from before. We will be moving on in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here are the corrections to the sentences from before. In the first sentence, which is the hypothetical auxiliary, you must have she will turn into she would to have the proper subjunctive mood form. In the next sentence, you have to change the would have to had in the hypothetical sentence in order to correct it. In the third example, which is a wishful auxiliary, you also have to change the would have into had in order to better correct for the subjunctive mood in the sentence. Finally, in the fourth sentence, which is counter to fact, you need to have the was changed to were in the sentence to have the proper subjunctive mood form. By understanding these corrections and by understanding the answers, you understand subjunctive mood a bit better. Don't worry if you made any mistakes while going over this. It is the practice that matters more. Even if subjunctive mood is dying, it is still relevant to our study of English writing. Subjunctive mood allows us to see a fundamental part of English writing, and we would not learn as much if we only studied what we were familiar with. Our next lecture will cover the final lesson in McGraw-Hill's SAT Guide Chapter 15, Coordinating Ideas, and how we can have multiple ideas in one sentence and have it written properly. Thank you for watching. Teach you next time. This lecture was brought to you by the McGraw-Hill SAT Guide, Chapter 15, Lesson 14, The Subjunctive Mood. Once again, thank you for watching.